In this video I want to talk about the book Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson. And I think you all know Jordan Peterson, but for the ones who don't know him, Jordan Peterson is a Canadian psychologist, and he used to work at Harvard University, and later on he worked at Toronto University. And right now he is traveling the world to give lectures everywhere, and he is kind of a big deal in, let's say, the intellectual dark web. I want to give you a brief overview of the main point of the book, and I won't get too much into detail. So I want to talk about chaos, order, and the individual. That's the hero and also the coward. And I think it's really important to understand these topics because suddenly you will start to understand the world. Because there are basic patterns of reality, and you can find them in stories, in fairy tales, in religion, in myths, but also in your own dreams. So once you get this, it's really amazing. And so I tend to drive my family a bit crazy with these topics, because then they're like, oh no, she's talking about chaos and order again. Make her stop. Yeah, but it's important. I think it's important. So first of all, chaos. Chaos is everything that is unknown. It is the dark. It is nature. It is the feminine. That's why it's also called Mother Nature. But it's also matter, contrary to spirit. The Latin word for mother is mater. That's matter. So there's a lot of overlap, but more about chaos is it is the night, it is the moon and the stars, it is the sea, it is water. So chaos can either create or destroy. When it creates, it's the great mother. It's like Mary. She gives birth to the unknown. She creates unknown life. The destroying, the devouring mother, she's like Kali. She is a Hindu goddess that creates new life, but immediately murders that new life. She murders her own children. And so order is everything that is known. Order is the light. Order is the sun. It's culture. It is spirit. It is God. And that's why God is masculine, because order is masculine. Chaos is feminine. Order is masculine. So order can either be the wise king who unites the old with the new, but it can also be the tyrannical father. And that would be complete order. There's no room for the unknown. So chaos and order always have to be in balance. This is also depicted in yin and yang. It's a perfect balance. And once it gets out of balance, then one of the two will be the dominant part. So when there is too much order, then you will end up in a tyranny. When there's too much order, everything has to be known. There's no room for creativity. There's no room for new things. Everything has to be controlled. Everything has to be known. And that's what we could see in these totalitarian systems in the 20th century with communism and Nazism, that people couldn't even have their own thoughts. Everything had to be known. But on the other side, when there is no order and everything is chaos, then everything is unknown. You don't know what is going to happen. There are no rules. That's also why nihilism is of chaos. And fascism, on the other side, is of order. But actually those two are two sides of the same coin. So when you have or only chaos or only order, it's both terrible. As we could see in the 20th century, that when everything is chaos, there are no rules, God dies, God order dies, there's no order anymore. Everything is chaotic. People they fall into nihilism. What will they do? They run from complete chaos to complete order. And complete order is ideology that gives you rules about everything, and everything has to be known, and chaos is completely pushed aside. So it's both very bad, and that's what eventually ideology is. In basic terms, it's only chaos or only order, and it's not the balance of these things, because that's what religion eventually is supposed to be, the perfect balance of chaos and order. So then we get to the individual, the hero and the coward. The hero is the person who has to bring chaos and order back in balance when it is out of balance. So to get chaos and order in balance again, he needs to go to the underworld. And it means that, well, it's a kind of difficult situation which he has to solve. And it can be in himself, a psychological underworld, let's say. You have to let a part of yourself die. That's why the hero in the underworld is eventually reborn, because he kind of solves the problem. You know, he kills the dragon, and the dragon is the problem. And then he will find the gold, or the princess, or the virgin, and that's, you know, what you eventually want. That's the solution. So the hero has to bring those two back in balance, chaos and order, and he has to die a little bit for that, but then he's reborn. That's why in this picture, the hero, the man, is depicted with a baby in his belly. That doesn't mean that he is actually pregnant and gives birth to new life, but that rather means that a part of him is strong enough to survive this problem and to grow out to be the new him, the new hero. So eventually, when the individual brings chaos and order back into balance, then he becomes the hero. And that's why it is very important that the individual is always placed above the collective. And that's a problem with ideologies, because ideologies, they don't put the individual above the collective, they put the collective above the individual. What that means is that when you're an individual and the individual is placed above the collective, then each individual has the space to discover the unknown and to discover truth. And when the collective is above the individual, then, you know, everybody has to believe in one idea, and there's no room to discover new things. There's no room for one person to discover truth. And that's why these ideologies, they always get stuck at one point, and they're being smashed by reality eventually. So eventually Jesus was the kind of hero archetype, and also, you know, Hercules and Harry Potter and these kind of types. But Jesus is also, at the same time, he's the individual, he's the hero, but he's also order. He's God. And it's funny because, so in all these creation myths, it starts with complete chaos. And the world exists from, well, no, not the world, the cosmos. It exists from only water, the chaotic waters. You know, water is chaos. And from within this chaos, then suddenly there comes order. That's also depicted in yin and yang. But also the opposite can happen. From within order, suddenly there can come chaos. So Mary, the Virgin Mary, she is like the great mother. She's chaos. And from within her, she doesn't need anything, she's a virgin. And so from within the chaos, suddenly order is born. From chaos, God is born. But also, because of the union of chaos and order, then the hero will be born. So Mary was actually pregnant of God. She was giving birth to the Son of God. So that's also the union of chaos and order. And then Jesus is the hero. So yeah, it's nice to think about that. But then on the other side of the hero, we have the coward. So the coward will always place the collective above the individual. And if we look at the devil, it's very interesting, because what did the devil do? Eventually, he wanted everything to be known. Everything had to be ordered. That's why he was also Lucifer when he was an angel. Lucifer is light. He was the angel of light. Light is the known, is order. And he wanted everything to be known. So that's like a totalitarian idea. But also, like Jung said, no tree, its branches can reach up to heaven unless its roots reach to hell. And that's what happens eventually when you can see that with all these totalitarian dictators. The moment they want to establish heaven on earth, they want to create this utopia, then eventually they end up creating hell, because they place the collective above the individual. They hate the hero, they hate the individual. There is no room for the unknown. They created their own truth, and they want to rule. And eventually that's also what happened to the devil. He wanted to rule in heaven, but eventually ended up ruling in hell. But still, for some people, they rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. And in the end, what it means to serve in heaven is that people live with a higher purpose. And you need a higher purpose in order to keep on living, because, you know, like Jordan Peterson always says, life is suffering. And, you know, when you suffer without a higher purpose, then, you know, why would anyone do that? Why would you suffer without a purpose? Then you suffer for nothing. Why not kill yourself? But once you have a higher purpose in life, then it makes the suffering bearable. Like Nietzsche said, he who has a why can almost bear any how. And that's also what the point that Viktor Frankl made in his book Man's Search for Meaning. It's a wonderful book. But yeah, so serving in heaven, that means that you have to live with a higher purpose. And so you need to live by moral standards. But if there's no higher purpose, then there are no moral standards. And so you'll end up in nihilism and eventually in those ideologies in which there's no room for the hero. So yeah, I hope that you understand a little bit of these chaos, order, and hero and coward explanations. So let me tell you the myth of Mesopotamia and the story of Pinocchio to illustrate more or less the point that I was making. So the creation myth of Mesopotamia is as follows: that there is Apsu and Tiamat, and Apsu is his order, and Tiamat is chaos, and they had a lot of children, gods, you know, and they were very clamorous, and they didn't like their own children, so they were planning to murder them. And the children, they found out, and they didn't want to be murdered, so they eventually murdered Apsu. And on the corpse of Apsu, they built a new house. So that means that they murdered order, they murdered their culture, but you can't live on and build on new things on the corpse of your dead culture. And when order dies, what comes from the underworld? Chaos. So Tiamat, she was a big dragon and stuff. She had a whole army of demons, and the demon king was Kingu. He was her new husband, and they tried to wipe out all of these gods. But then there was this new god. He was called Murdoch, and Murdoch had eyes around his whole head, and so he could see everything. And everything he said was truth. And you need that. In order to be a hero, you need to see everything very clear, and you need to speak the truth. Because with lies, you know, the coward is the one that lies. The hero is the one that speaks the truth. And then he finally goes to Tiamat, and he catches her in a net. And that's also what it means, is that when there is a problem, you have to see what the problem is, and you have to encapsulate it. Because otherwise, you know, when she's the dragon, she's chaos, she's the unknown. When the problem is unknown, then, you know, you can't solve it. But when it is caught in a net, then you can see what the problem is, and you can eventually solve it. So that's what Murdoch did, and he cut her open, and he created of her body the heavens and the earth, and of the blood of Kingu he created humans, people. So there's so much wisdom in it, because, you know, it's the chaos and order story. So when you murder order, chaos comes, and there's the hero. Yeah, it's very clear. And also Jordan Peterson talks a lot about the Pinocchio story. So Pinocchio, he is a wooden doll, and eventually he has to rescue his father, because his father, Geppetto, he is order. He is in the monster in the sea. Let's say the dragon in the underworld. And he has to save his father. He has to save culture, because otherwise, you know, you can't live without culture. You can't live without order. So he saves his father, and then he becomes a real boy. He becomes the hero. So it's funny, when you really understand these things, then you really start to understand the world. So I hope you guys learned something from my explanation, and I hope you liked it. And if you didn't understand it, well, tell me, because then I will have to improve even more with making videos. Okay, that was it.